Conversations across time, 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 across time, conversations across time, conversations across time, conversations across time, conversations across time, conversations.
Hi, I'm Mark Hoffman. Tonight's panel on Conversations Across Time includes Marie Antoinette, Queen of France during the French Revolution, Ferdinand Marcos, dictator of the Philippines who exploited the Filipino people and stole their money, and Karl Marx, the founder of communism and scientific socialism. Watch the lively debate between these three panelists regarding income inequality and what should be done.
Good evening. Welcome once again to Conversations Across Time. Tonight's guests are President Ferdinand Marcos, President of the Philippine Islands. Seated next to President Marcos is Karl Marx. Karl Marx has been here before. He is a philosopher that we love to engage in conversation. Seated next to Mr. Marx is Queen Marie Antoinette. As you know, Marie Antoinette was Queen of France. And seated to my right is my guest co-host, Jennifer Cardonic-Walker.
Hello.
Ms. Walker is an attorney in Philadelphia and a dear friend, and she's agreed to sit in for our Babette Josephs, who is on assignment. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for being here.
It's nice to be here.
So let's just get right to this. I want to start with you, President Marcos.
Ferdinand Marcos was the corrupt dictator of the Philippines. He became dictator after World War II. He exploited the Filipino people. He stole the money from the Filipino treasury, appointed his own relatives to important positions, and gave them lucrative contracts in the Philippines, and the Philippines have been bankrupt ever since.
And I'd like to ask, first of all, do you have any regrets for the way that you and your friends, the Rolex 12, ruled in the Philippine Islands? And some background for our audience is that certainly during the term of your presidency, you and your wife Imelda, best known for being probably the quintessential shoe freak, you and your wife ruled the Philippines in such a way that the poor people of the Philippine Islands lived in great poverty and distress. And I'd just like to know, do you have any regrets for how you ruled?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here.
As you know, I came into power in 1966, and we put forth a new society and proposed that we were going to build roads, and that we were going to...
That's a key phrase you used, proposed. I'm sorry, go on.
That's true. We proposed we would build roads, we would build infrastructure, and we would do things for our country. At that time, we had the Vietnam War. The United States and Lyndon Johnson was a very important ally of ours, and we had problems of our own.
Isn't it somewhat questionable for you to start with 1966? I mean, because history has shown us that the way that you ascended to the presidency was not, you used a made-up history.
I am the president of a country. Okay, that is my role. That's a role I performed for a long period of time. The Philippines is a pristine country. Any leader of any country, any student of history, knows that myth is very, very important to a people.
So,
if you have
President
done
Marcos,
research,
I just want to ask, when you say myth, so then are you rationalizing or attempting to explain to the audience tonight that the lies that you told, I mean, there were falsehoods about your past in terms of your involvement in helping the United States during the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that this was a myth that was perpetuated by you in order to be a successful leader in later years of the Philippines. Is that what you're saying?
the Second World War was certainly not a myth. The Second
But
World
your
Second
alleged
World,
performance during that was a myth.
Mr. El Presidente,
yes.
did you not lie about receiving medals from General MacArthur that you never earned? Did you? What kind of myth is that? It sounds like George Washington chopping down the cherry tree in American history.
A very prominent myth.
Yes, but that myth occurred hundreds of years, 100 years after his presidency. You used yours to get yourself in a position of power, first in the House of Representatives, then the Senate, then the presidency.
The relationship
And you
between...
kept using that myth of the medals and earning the medals, and you were the top guerrilla fighter against the Japanese when you weren't.
The United States and the Philippines were very, very strong allies at that time. As a politician, as a leader of a country, okay, as a student of history, if you have done your real research on me, you will understand that I have always been a student of history.
You're no different than any other capitalist that comes to power on the backs of the working people, exploits the people with myths and money, and uses your power for your own benefit. You're no different than anyone else.
Can you elaborate on that, please? So that I can rebut?
Yes. Number one, you stole the treasury of your country for yourself and your relatives and your wife. Number two, you put the country in debt that they still haven't paid. They haven't even paid off. They're still paying the interest on the debt you accrued with you and your wife.
And that debt, just so the audience
not the
can
principle,
understand,
correct.
That when you talked about building the infrastructure of the country, the debt that Mr. Marx is referring to has to do with loans that you took out on behalf of the Philippines from Western powers, and those loans have never been paid back, and the infrastructure was not built.
And you funded it in.
You're wrong there.
No infrastructure?
You're wrong there. If you look at my presidency, okay, you will find that we built more roads, built more schools, built more hospitals than any other president than all of the other presidents in the Philippines combined.
Wait a
and
minute.
that's a fact.
If you built
Madam.
two, that would have been
Exactly.
more.
That's what.
That's a
compared to
relative
what?
statement. How about all the money you funneled from the loans to your family and to your wife's family? And how about all the phony corporations you set up in crony capitalism to benefit your own family and your wife's family?
The relationship between the United States and the Philippines was very important.
Well,
And what's that have
Marx.
to do with stealing money?
A lot of money came from the West to my country, which is the country that I was responsible for. I'm also responsible for protecting my country. We spent I quadrupled the military budget. At the same time, I built roads, I built hospitals, and I built schools.
Okay, now, hold on, President Marcos, because we're so early into this discussion, and already you're defending your presidency. I would like you to address the accusation, and I believe the year is 1938. You were prosecuted for the murder of Julio Naldosan, who was an enemy or an adversary of your dad's. Mm-hmm. You were prosecuted for that. You spent years in jail. In fact, while you were in jail, it's when you earned your law degree. So I know you want to defend your presidency, but I want to just get back to your entire history, starting back in 1938.
No, I was not convicted of that.
You were not convicted of that. Okay.
You're not denying you did it.
Well, his history shows that I did not do that. I became the president of the Philippines.
I
was the
think
president
you
of the
were.
Philippines during very intricate times, and we developed very important relationships with the West that benefited us in the Philippines.
El Presidente, you're a typical capitalist. You had to declare martial law to protect your own presidency. You blamed the revolution on my followers, communists, and that's why you had to declare martial law. You bankrupt your country, you stole money from the treasury, and you're going to say you built a few roads and a few schools and a few hospitals.
Mr. Marx,
thank you for calling
I want you
Mr.
to know that I know who you are. Okay, I know who your brothers are. Okay, I know that you're the smart one. Okay, I know that you're the abstract thinker. Okay, and I want you to know that I have profound respect for your intelligence.
But
however, I am a leader of the country, and as a leader of the country, there's two things that I have to be cognizant of. Okay, the good guys and the bad guys.
who defines
Okay,
who's good and who's
excuse
bad?
me.
Who defines who's good and who's bad? I mean, listen,
I'm going to define the good guys, but in
Okay.
terms of the good guys, you have to understand that you need a tough, malicious leader. You need that's what people are looking for.
So
okay?
your political opponent, you had him assassinated in an airport because he was a bad guy?
No,
You're the bad guy.
That's not true.
Well, who
But
assassinated Aquino?
I don't know.
Okay, there's a thing that when I said I'm going to defer, I'm going to ask my co-host to just jump in here for a moment, because you said something early on that I want to take as a trial attorney, and I'm sitting here with another one. I take issue with. You said I was acquitted of that. You were acquitted of the murder of Julio Naldesan.
Correct.
Now, that's a term of art. I was acquitted. And Mr. Marx asked you a question that you never answered, or at least you answered with saying you were acquitted of that.
Mm-hmm.
His question was point blank, did you do it? And I'm going to let, please, Jennifer, because I think I'm probably a little unhinged here when it comes to Mr. Marcos.
No, there is definitely a difference between saying that I was not convicted versus I actually did it. You could not be convicted but still have been guilty of the crime.
Well, the historical record shows that I was acquitted. What I will tell you now to straighten history out, if that's what you're asking, is no, I did not do it. I went on to become the president of the Philippines.
Well, that's true,
Okay.
but you did not do it. Were not convicted, excuse me, but now you're saying you didn't do it, but there certainly was some inkling at the time that you did.
Well, those things happen, but I went on to become the president of the Philippines. I went on to become a president that protected the Philippines, that built roads, that built schools, that built hospitals.
Well, but your
Did
people
you
were
rule the
certainly
Philippines for 11 years under martial law? If you were a true democratically elected president, why would you have to rule your country for 11 years under martial law? No free speech, no free press, no free assembly. Explain that, El Presidente.
Miss Antoinette,
Yes, President.
I am so happy that you're here today.
skirting of the question.
Why? Because you have someone of your same ilk.
No, because I have profound respect for her, and I think that she was mistreated in history. She
And wait a minute,
was a
I just wanna-
dedicated mother.
I just want to jump in. You think she was mistreated in history, which sort of indicates, at least to my way of thinking, that what you're saying to us is that history has mistreated you also.
No,
Okay.
no. History has. I am remembered for one thing in history. I am remembered for only one thing in history:
Your wife?
for having an exotic wife.
An
Okay?
exotic wife.
As the president of the country, and I had profound respect, okay, for exotic women such as Miss Antoinette, okay, who was also a very good mother to her family, who was very, very loyal to her husband at a very rough
okay,
time,
but no.
who in 1939 supported Austria. I have very profound respect, and I also have profound respect for Mr. Marx and for intelligence. However, I understand that intelligence, thinking, reading, is not important to most people. And as a leader of a country, I have to provide security for my country.
Okay.
I have to
Well,
provide.
no. You see,
You still didn't answer the question.
Yeah,
Why
he hasn't
did you
answered the
have to
question.
govern under martial law for 11 years if the people loved you? If you were a good leader, why would you have to use martial law? Not for 6 months.
To protect the
not
people.
for 11 years?
You're talking about.
Wait a minute,
You're talking
Mr.
about
Marcos,
window
wait,
dressing.
Hold on, Mr. Marcos, because see, you keep throwing things in that really are a distraction. It seems to me that you're saying that the people of your country had no interest in education, they couldn't think for themselves, and therefore you were a benevolent leader who had to make decisions on their behalf such that they couldn't have free speech, that they couldn't oppose you. I mean, but if that's not what you're saying, it's certainly what it sounds like.
It certainly begs the question, how did you know?
I was important. Health is important to me. Education was important to me. But of utmost importance to me, it was protecting my people. Excuse me a second. Excuse me, I have a phone call. Excuse me. Yes, Mr. President. Yes. Everything
I can imagine which president you're talking to.
Here's what you have in common.
President of the United States. Yes.
Yes, the President of the United States wins.
President.
We have everything. We have everything under control, Mr. President.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
That's
no,
why
we have
you had
everything.
imposed. Karl Marx is the founder of scientific socialism. His economic theories of history and economic determinism are still with us today. He's either loved by some and hated by many.
Everything is under control.
And you're a typical capitalist, and the only thing you have in common with Queen Marie Antoinette
we got
is
the
you
check,
both
Mr. President.
got rich, and the poor got poorer, just like what is occurring in the United States today.
Yes.
And eventually the people rose up against you, and the only way you could stay in power is by assassinating your political opponent.
We did not assassinate our political
Yes, you
opponent.
did.
We stayed in power for a long period of time.
Under martial
in
law,
history.
that's not democratic power.
We took
And
martial law off, but
it's a
for a long period of
typical
time, we put martial law in. At the same time, we built hospitals,
11 years.
roads.
You're talking about these hospitals and roads and schools,
right,
but did you have any
suppress
clue?
freedom of speech, press, just like all bureaucratic capitalist bourgeois do. And the only thing you have in common with her is you bankrupt the country's treasury. The poor got poorer, the rich got richer, your family got rich, your wife's family got rich, and the only thing I feel bad about is you died a natural death. You should have been beheaded like Marie Antoinette. Hi, my name is Mark Hoffman. I'm a history teacher. I've been teaching history for over 40 years in the Philadelphia public schools. I feel that conversations can be used as a valuable tool regarding historical figures and current events. What can be more current and more stimulating than to see a discussion of Abigail Adams talking about Ray Rice and the abuse of women and equal rights for women? Or Theodore Herzl discussing his move towards Zionism because of anti-Semitism in the Dreyfus Affair in France. I've portrayed numerous characters on the show. I played Woodrow Wilson discussing the Treaty of Versailles and how it led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. Charles de Gaulle warning John Foster Dulles about the perils of Vietnam. Pope Clement VII talking about the politics of the Catholic Church. Theodore Herzl, again, talking about Zionism, and Oliver Wendell Holmes, discussing clear and present danger, the First Amendment, and how it relates to the Snowden affair today.
It's important to me for people to understand how much history impacts what it is that we do today, what happens in the world politically. It's all based upon historical incidents. Now, Conversations Across Time takes the approach that what if you were able to get together historical characters from differing time periods to discuss issues and politics. And that's what we aim to do. So we will have a Thomas Jefferson with Sally Hemings and Josephine Baker. We will have a Elizabeth Barrett Browning with Tupac Shakur and Oliver Wendell Holmes. We aim to have the viewer not only be entertained but to be educated. History is such a marvelous thing. Everybody involved in Conversations Across Time operates from one principle, and that is that history is exciting. History is something that the more you know about it, the more you want to know, and the more you begin to understand what is going on in today's climate. So we've asked you to watch Conversations Across Time. We ask you to participate in the learning process and learn with us as we move forward. But please know that history is something that is alive, it's vibrant. It's not your father's history lesson. It's not what you learned in school. It's so much more interesting, and it also gives you an opportunity to understand what's going on in today's world.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Cardonic Walker. I'm an attorney in Philadelphia, and I'm happy to be this week's co-host for Conversations Across Time.
May I just...
Oh my goodness. I have to interrupt here for just a second.
Well,
just a second.
Well,
because here I am getting blamed for a few things here that are put on the table. I would just like to say that, you know, I was put into a big role at such a young age, and I did not have the push for education such as the president here. And so for somebody to say that to me about, you know, bankrupting the country, yes, you know what, on the behalf of the people, I should have been more careful and more cautious and more compassionate. However, I was not brought up by my parents to have known of such things. Nor did I have somebody that stood by my side to explain
now,
about
I want to say that. I want to address. I'll let you go first, co-host. I will.
I'm just going to ask if you could let our viewers know, how old were you when you came into power?
15.
So we're talking very young.
Very, very young.
Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France during the French Revolution. She was married to Louis XVI. Actually, she was an Austrian who married him at a young age, and she presided over the French Revolution, and she was beheaded, and she had total disdain for the French people.
And perhaps that gives you, I won't want to say an excuse, but more of a reason why you were just as out of touch as, gives you more reason to be out of touch than President Marcos over there, who had plenty of years of experience before he came
We were in
power.
touch with the United States. We were in touch with the West.
What about our own people?
Our country was dependent on the money that we got from the World Bank and from the United States.
Your country, let me say this. To this day, as we sit here in 2015, your country has yet to be able to pay off the debt from the World Bank and from the United States. Now, one other thing. You talked about, and you received a phone call from the president. What's interesting that the audience should understand, when you talk about the president, when you refer to Mr. President in the United States, you can be referring to a president from before. Now, so just make that clear. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to say this. I want to read a quote from one of your supporters. We love your adherence to democratic principles and to democratic process, and we will not leave you in isolation. And that was spoken by then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush. That was in 1981. So I'm saying to you, you got a phone call from a president, that's probably who you were talking to.
You're right.
Okay, so now, when we talk about Marie Antoinette, we have to appreciate she was 15 years old when she became queen. And that was great that you asked that question. How old was she when she came to
I am a
college?
great fan of Marie Antoinette.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. A great fan of her because she's beautiful, or a great fan of Marie
Great fan of her because
of her leadership
she's
style?
cultured, because she's intelligent, because she raised her children. Okay, I understand the miscarriages that she went through, and that she stayed very loyal to her husband at a very important time. Miss Antoinette could have been executed. I mean, could have been saved from execution had she left with her and her children. But she did not. She refused to do that because of the loyalty that she had to her husband and to her family and her children.
There's a real question about her husband, by the way. When you say loyalty,
Yeah, what kind of loyalty? She had 9 million lovers.
and this is
She didn't consummate her marriage. Like, she didn't have sex with her husband until, I don't even know.
Mr. Marx,
Seven years into the marriage.
7 years was a very, very long time.
Mr.
And how do you know it was all on him? I mean,
Mr. Marx, as a student of history, which I know that you are, okay, if you had really studied Miss Antoinette, okay, you would understand that not only was she a very good friend to women, she had very good men friends. All of the gossip,
I
all
agree
of
with
the
that, El
gossip
Presidente.
does
She
not
had
necessarily
very good men friends.
It is not necessarily true, and I do not believe it's true. And the reason
let's
why I don't
ask-
believe
let's
it's
ask
true
her.
is
She's
because
here
of
right
how.
now. Why don't we ask her?
We'll ask her.
Go ahead and ask her.
Were you faithful to Louis XVI your entire marriage, Miss Antoinette?
I absolutely was. There was a few people that tried to pursue me. However, I did not act on anything. And I did love my husband very, very, very much, so much that I did not leave him or my children. And I could have, and I didn't.
Did you love him as you would love a child? Because the jury's still out on his sanity.
As
I
the
mean,
as the father of her children, she loved him.
Okay. You know, this is what's interesting about this.
First of all, the people thought you were promiscuous. The people called you the Austrian bitch, the French people. You cared not for them. You would buy extravagant necklaces. You'd spend millions of dollars on your court, and then you're going to tell us you were loyal to France? You were loyal to your husband and to the high lifestyle, just like all the upper class, and you looked at disdain on the lower class. Now, even though it may be questionable in history whether you said let them eat cake or not, the sentiment was, I have disdain for these people. I don't care that they're starving. I don't care that there's no bread. And that's your attitude, and that was his attitude, and that's the attitude of the elite in the United States. And I want to warn the people of the United States that what happened to her and what happened to Mr. Marcos, because he would have been killed sooner or later, will happen in the United States unless they address the problem of income inequality. And I've been preaching this since I wrote the Communist Manifesto in Da Capital. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing, and eventually it leads to revolution. It led to your being beheaded, and it led to your ouster, and you would have been ousted a long time ago, a long time before you were, if it hadn't been for martial law and ruling through the military.
And
Mr.
now,
Marx.
I want to. I'm so sorry because this is a heated conversation, and unfortunately, as always happens, we are out of time. I'm going to ask our audience if they would be good enough to tune in next week when we take up the second part of this conversation across time. Thank you so much, and would you please just come back next week and let us finish this conversation, and will you be able to come back?
I certainly will.
I've enjoyed having you next to me.
We'll be
Derek.
happy to.
Be an honor.
Okay. So we will see you next week for Conversations Across Time for part 2 of this very heated conversation across time. Thank you.
Conversations across time. 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 across time. Conversations 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 across time.